Let's review what we've done so far. First, we've created an axis to serve as the center line for our lens. If you can't see the axis in the viewport, use the menu bar View Axes button, or in the heads-up display or HUD at the top of the window, click the little eyeglasses icon and drop down to the Axes button. You should see the blue axis line in the middle of your viewport. After creating the center axis, we use the sketcher to create a fully defined 2D entity called Sketch 1, and importantly, we click the Exit Sketch button to complete our changes to the sketch. I can tell that I'm no longer editing the sketch because the dimensions and constraints have disappeared, the lines have turned gray, the Exit Sketch buttons have disappeared from the confirmation corner at the top right of the viewport, and the status bar at the bottom of the screen says Editing Part. It is very important to always be aware of whether or not you are editing a sketch at any given time. All that remains for us to do is to create the actual revolved geometry called a revolved base. We could use the menu bar Insert Boss Base Revolve feature, or instead just go up to the toolbar ribbon Features tab and click on Revolved Boss Base. The Property Manager appears with a yellow box asking us what sketch we would like to revolve. We could select the sketch in the viewport, but in this case I'm going to expand the flyout design tree from the top left of the viewport and select Sketch 1 from there. Once we've selected a sketch, the Revolve tool becomes active in the Property Manager, but an axis of revolution hasn't been selected. With the axis of revolution parameter highlighted in the Property Manager, click on the axis in the viewport or select it from the design tree. Make sure that Direction 1 Revolve type is set to blind and that the angle is set to 360 degrees. As with the axis tool, we can drop the tool just by clicking any green checkbox or by hitting Enter on the keyboard. Hit the F key on the keyboard and use the middle mouse to rotate the model around and look at the result. To see the design in section view, use the menu bar View Display Section View button, or use the heads-up display at the top of the viewport and click on the Section View button. The Section View tool appears in the Property Manager. That lets us select a plane with which to temporarily cut the model. Select the right plane and hit Enter on the keyboard. Now our model is cut in half, allowing us to clearly see the cross-section of the revolve. Notice that the gray Sketch 1 outline has disappeared from the viewport, and take a look back at the design tree. Axis 1 is still there, but notice that Sketch 1 has disappeared and been replaced with a feature called Revolve 1. Click the plus sign at the left of the feature to expand it, and notice that Sketch 1 has been absorbed into Revolve 1. It's a good idea to rename your geometry to help you remember what it's used for. Call Axis 1 the lens axis, and we can change these names just the same as any Windows folder just by clicking and waiting for a second. And notice that I'm using letters, numbers, and underscores only with no spaces or special characters, and then I'll hit Enter when I'm done. I'm going to rename Revolve 1 to the Interface and Sketch 1 to the Interface Profile. Make the Interface Profile sketch visible in the viewport by clicking it in the design tree and then selecting the blue eyeglasses icon from the pop-up. Notice that the gray outline appears and overlays exactly with the cross-section of the revolved feature. If for any reason I want to make a change to the shape of the revolved solid, the first thing to try is to alter the profile sketch. To edit a sketch, just right-click it in the design tree and then click on Edit Sketch from the pop-up. The sketch turns black and all the dimensions come back to the screen. To look at the sketch straight on, you could use the HUD View Orientation button and select Normal to, or we could just hit Control 8 on the keyboard. Then I can zoom and choose a dimension to modify. I'm just going to modify this 10.9 over here to, let's say, 15 and hit Enter. Notice that everything gets bigger, and when I exit the sketch using the confirmation corner, you see that our revolved feature has updated to reflect the changes we made to that original sketch. Now if I edit the sketch again by right-clicking and saying Edit Sketch and changing this value back to 10.9 and then exit the sketch, our revolve feature changes back to its original state. SOLIDWORKS is a history-based modeler, meaning that every operation we perform in SOLIDWORKS is recorded in the design tree in the exact order in which it was created. So if we create any feature in the history tree, all of its children will update to reflect that change. It's an enormously powerful way of thinking and working. If you're used to working with non-historical programs like Rhino or Adobe Illustrator, you may be tempted to delete geometry and just start over when you feel like you've made a mistake. In SOLIDWORKS, we only delete geometry if we need to radically change it. For most changes, we'll simply update the parameters of our geometry, and the entire model will update accordingly. Now we're going to practice what we've learned so far by sketching and revolving 10 more shapes, and each shape should teach us something new about the sketcher and ways of working quickly and efficiently in SOLIDWORKS. Now before we start our sketch, let's go ahead and turn off section view in the heads-up display. Then right-click on any part of our revolved feature and click the blue eyeglasses icon to hide it. So it's still there, we just can't see it at the moment. Make sure that the profile sketch is still visible in the viewport. Select the right plane, and then let's create a new sketch. It's really important that we are creating a fresh new sketch, not editing our original sketch. So if this original sketch were black and blue, I would know that I am not in a fresh sketch, but editing an existing sketch. As it is, the profile sketch is grayed out, and the status bar at the bottom says Editing Sketch 3, so we're good to go. I'm going to hit Control 8 on the keyboard to move our view normal to this current sketch. Click in the viewport to deselect the right plane. Now I'm going to zoom right in up here, grab my line tool up at the top, or hit the L key on the keyboard to fire it off, and then click in the viewport to start to create a new shape. It's going to look something like this, and I'm just eyeballing it into place. Once again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to add dimensions after the fact. Once we're done, I can hit the Escape key to drop the line tool, and we can start to put this thing into place using the Smart Dimension tool. I'll just right-click in the viewport, open up the Smart Dimension tool, and we're ready to go. I know that the distance that I've measured from this line to this line is 9.3 millimeters. I know that the distance from this line to this line is 3.25 millimeters. The height from there to there is 1.25 millimeters. The total height, 1.6. And I can even create relationships between existing sketches and the current sketch. So, for example, I can put a distance from this line to this line and make that a 0.5 millimeter. I also know that I want the distance from this line to this one to be a clearance of about 1/4 millimeter. And now our sketch is completely black, meaning that it is fully defined in space. If I hit the Escape key to drop the Dimension tool and try to drag a piece of geometry, it won't move anywhere because it's fully defined by dimensions and constraints. Once I'm done with it, I can hit the Exit Sketch button at the top right of the screen. Let's go over here to the feature tree and rename this our f-stop ring. And go ahead to the next profile. Click the right plane, go up to the top of the screen, and click on the Sketch button. Now we're going to learn a new tool. It's right over here in the Sketch Tools. It's the Rectangle tool. You'll notice right now my Rectangle tool is set to the 3-point corner rectangle because that's the one that I most recently used. There's a little arrow to the right of it, and if I click that, it will drop down and give me several other potential options. I'm going to click on the Corner Rectangle tool. And notice that in the Property Manager for the tool, I have the opportunity to change back to a different type of rectangle definition if I want to. But the corner rectangle is perfect for our purposes right now. Let's come over in the viewport and just draw a rectangle something like that. I can hit the Escape key to drop the tool, and then we can just smart dimension this however we see fit. I happen to know that I want for this line to be coincident with that line, so if I hold the Control key to select both, I can just come up here and use the Make Collinear button that we used before, and now this line turns black because it is defined by this other sketch. Then we can take the Smart Dimension tool and add a 1/4 millimeter clearance between these two lines. And though I don't actually know the total width of this rectangle, I do know that the distance from this edge of the aperture ring to this edge of the readout is 5 millimeters exactly. And I also know that the depth doesn't really matter at all. I'll just make it 5 millimeters for the sake of it. And that'll take care of that. One more fully defined sketch. Exit Sketch, and we're done.